thoughtful ideas, suggestions for guests and topics.
Great events, programs, and
Welcome to this week's segment of Dialogue Houston. I'm your host, Lawrence Payne. To our regular viewing audience, welcome. To those joining us for the first time here for HCC's TV Dialogue Houston, we're here now every Tuesday and Thursday, again on Saturday at 3 p.m. As always, in the top of the hour, let me thank you very much for your calls, emails, and text messages concerning all the shows we've had thus far, but particularly your great ideas for topics and guests and subjects to be covered on upcoming segments of Dialogue Houston. After all, this is your community affairs, public affairs show, proudly here on HCC TV, now going into its 29th year. I want to thank you all. I've received a lot of text messages and emails in the last few weeks concerning issues and topics you want to see covered in the new year. And yes, we are about to survive 2020. And 2021 will be different. It has to be different. And we're going to make sure that the issues we talk about starting in January, we'll be back on January 22nd, will allow us to really frame and have a context to what we really want to lay out for everyone for 2021. But before we get to 2021, I have two wonderful guests today. And the first part of the show, my good friend, Rev Ellen Denisenius, who will introduce herself. And then the second show, we're going to talk about with a young man who has that new millennial or whatever age group he is, perspective. And I'm fudging on purpose to let him kind of tell you, he doesn't really fit in any category. He's a young man, but he has a great wisdom at his age already. We are going to look at how we end 2020 on a positive, upbeat note, with all the great aspirational goals we have for 2021. But I want to close out this end of this year in a positive way. Before I bring on my first guest, though, let me just make one comment about a dear friend who passed recently, who was one of my mentors and my spiritual director for years, Sister Mary Denison, Sister Mary Denison of the Cynical Sisters. She was a sister of the Cynicals for 69 years. She just passed this past week at 92 years young. She ran a program at the University of St. Thomas for Masters in Religious Education, and she also ran a counseling thing at the Cynical. She was probably the closest thing to a living saint on this earth that I knew. The woman had the biggest heart of anybody I ever knew. And she was just a saint of a person. She had a listening heart, loving and supportive, deep wisdom, a prayerful spirituality to beat anyone, and great wisdom that she always did with a sense of humor. She'll be deeply missed not only by myself, but many of us that she have mentored and tutored over the years, particularly from a spiritual director standpoint. And so I just had to say, thank you, Sister Denison. I know you're up in heaven organizing God to get him kind of to understand what we need for 2021. So more power to you, and God bless and thank you. All right, moving forward now. Ellen, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because I'm not going to do justice if I try. I'll let you introduce yourself and tell the wonderful audience a little bit about yourself and your background, because it is such a fascinating, multi-purpose, multifunctional background. So welcome, first of all.
Thank you, Larry. It's a pleasure to be here and be with you this morning. Yes, I'm Reverend Ellen Denisenius, Junious, and you're so right, I wear multiple hats, one of which is I work at Lone Star College, the Cy-Fair campus, and serve as the chair of the Business Administration and Logistics Department. I've been at Lone Star for quite a number of years, since 2007. And in addition to working at Lone Star, I also serve on the steering committee or board of directors for the Faith Leaders Coalition of Greater Houston since its inception. I appreciate you mentioning Sister Mary, because I'm also a certified spiritual director and did some work at the Cynical Retreat, and certainly enjoyed meeting her and just all that she had done to serve the community. So that is another hat that I wear is spiritual direction. So I work with individuals, holding the space for them as they walk their journey through life. And lastly, another role that I serve is as pastoral care coordinator at Resurrection Metropolitan Community Church, located in the Heights.
So you're the perfect person then for me to ask this question with that background. As we spoke on the phone earlier this week, people are under amazing stress, anxiety, and frustration with this year. COVID, yes, but also in the post-George Floyd reality that we're living in, and just trying to cope with day-to-day life, being cooped up inside for people who are extroverts, that really doesn't work. Having now become the teacher and learn how to teach, to be able to teach your own children, by learning at home and schooling from home. And all those things have taken its toll. And I know that when I talk to parents and I talk to adults, they're concerned about their own mental health and on their own spirituality, but they're also concerned about their children. And the children, I think, weighs on them as much, if not more, than their own kind of where they are. So speak to us a little bit, because you have such great students at Lone Star. I've had the fortunate to have spoken to your class, and they're really a great bunch of young people. But I'm sure all of this is getting to them too. So how are we coping? What are we doing to cope?
You know, Larry, that's the reality that we're in right now. And you'll hear people talk about having pandemic fatigue and being tired of being isolated, being tired of not having their regular routines and having their schedules interrupted, as well as not being able to spend the kind of time, quality time with their families in the way that they do. One thing I can say about the students that I see on a day-to-day basis is these are resilient students. They understand the challenges that we face. You know, one of the first things that I ask them during the beginning of school is asking about their comfort in wearing masks. And for them, they know that it's important, and so they wear their mask. They manage through the stress of life. One thing I also think is important for this generation is that they have seen a tremendous amount of change over their lifetime. Many of these students that are in college right now are students who were born right after the terrorist attack in September 11th, 2001. And so they've seen a lot of violence, and while those aren't, you know, necessarily the positive aspects of life, you know, they are a resilient group of people. With regard to their mental support, one of the things that is important is that people feel like that they can get the help that they need. You know, we are seeing students who struggle to maintain their coursework and juggle that with the demands of their work life and having to take care of their families, especially when you may have someone who has tested positive for COVID and someone has to take care of the children. You know, so it's a great demand on them mentally, emotionally, and as well as spiritually. But I just want to reiterate that what I'm seeing is a lot of resilience. And at the same time, our teachers, our instructors are understanding, making the adjustments that they need to make in order to support these students to finish what they start. So that's a really important piece of it. And so there's a lot of support and infrastructure that is put in place to support these students. One of the things, it's not business as usual. You know, it's just not a matter of if a student doesn't show up for class that we what we try to do is reach out to that student and have multiple points of contact to ensure that we stay in touch and know what's happening with these students, and just know and let them know that they can feel supported in this process. But, you know, absolutely, for some students it's harder and they have had to postpone their education, but we are creating opportunities and ways, whether that's financial support, whether that's through counseling that's offered through the school, you know, just whatever support that we can give them, because these are trying times for everyone, and they are a resilient group of students.
I think that resiliency is so important because, you know, 2020 was one of those years. You had a health pandemic, you had a racial pandemic, and how are they coping with this racial reality in the post-George Floyd world on top of the COVID-19 thing? I know that a lot of your students are always very engaged and very active in whatever's occurring. Like I said, I enjoyed being with your students. I also enjoyed their questions. They asked great questions. But I'm sure with the George Floyd reality, they were deeply involved with that also.
Right, and so what I'll say to that is, you know, absolutely, you know, what's really interesting is that for this group of students, particularly, you know, the ones that are just coming out of high school, is for them, it's just not acceptable for some of the issues that we are having to deal with, particularly as it relates to the inequalities and you know, dealing with the police and, like you said, with George Floyd. But I tell you that what I noticed is many of them are very focused. They're focused because they have multiple responsibilities. Many of them are helping and assisting with the financial demands on the families right now. And so I don't believe they are distracted from their ultimate goals, but they definitely understand and they definitely want to see change. We haven't had any particular protest or anything like that go on actually on the campus, but we do have those conversations about what students think in terms of the way they feel, if they feel that it's an equitable place for them. They are learning about workplace discrimination. They are learning about diversity and inclusion, and they're very, very much perked up.
Well, in that perked up reality, since they are in business classes,
Yes.
How does that whole economic prospect look going forward? I mean, I think economics and business and jobs and what will be available, all that's changing. How one prepares himself for the marketplace, what courses they take, what skill sets they learn. To be able to take advantage of what's out there and what will be changing more and more as we go forward. The workplace will never be the same after COVID-19. The way we work, how we work, and et cetera, will all be different. So how are they seeing their projections of their life as they move through the coursework to become the professional in whatever area they choose?
Well, the one thing that Lone Star College offers is that we not only have an academic program for students who are seeking their associate's degree with the intention of going to a four-year college and getting their bachelor's degree. We also focus on workforce development. So we work with the industry to support them and making sure that we are preparing our students for a first class, giving them a first class education and preparing them to meet the demands of the workforce. So the students are enrolling in programs. They are very much aware of how the education that they receive is going to support them in securing jobs in the future and jobs that are relevant, because they know that we work closely with industry so that we can stay connected to the shifts and the changes that are happening. Now, as you know, many students, because they are young in their careers, many of them work in the work at grocery stores in the retail industry and the food services industry, and so some of them have had impacts in terms of layoffs on their jobs. Many of them are finding other jobs, but that is definitely a challenge for them in terms of recognizing the value that they get with their education and how that helps them to be more marketable going forward. Particularly in our program, like our logistics program, you know, that's one of the areas where you're seeing a lot of movement. We've got partnerships with companies like FedEx, for example, and other companies so that we can help students transition into jobs. But it is it definitely is impacting everyone, not just our younger students. We have our non-traditional students, some of whom are coming from the oil and gas industry, and they've definitely seen an impact. But what most of the students are doing is they are, because we do very well with our advising and talking to students about, how their skills will translate into the workforce. And so pertaining to business, they know that they are getting skills that's going to help them become more marketable. And again, because we have partnerships and relationships with our industry partners who can come to us when they are actually looking for hiring students. So we also help them to meet their hiring goals.
On the workforce, let's talk about that for a moment, because you were so good at pointing out that the four-year degree, four-year college degree, there are some great certificate programs there at Lone Star. Some of them as short as 6 months, some of them a year and a half, that once you receive that certificate, you can get a great job. Not only a great job, a well-paying job. And I think that's something we forget. Everyone is not meant to go to a four-year college, not going to graduate from a four-year institution, not going to even do 2 years and finish their associate. But there are other great needs out there from industry that can be fulfilled through these certificate programs and receive a great salary as soon as the day you walk out with a certificate, they're waiting to hire you.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Well, we have a host of programs, specifically in our medical area, where we have a nursing program, we have a dental program, we have a EMS program for firefighters. So lots of programs that are available to students that they can get their certificate and go right, as you said, and get a job, particularly in the medical arena. We've also started a 4-year program for our nursing program, and also for our cybersecurity program. My program, which is the business administration program, and as I mentioned, at the Cy-Fair campus, but this program is at all of our campuses. We are also, we have a certificate in human resource management. And so students are able to get a certificate, associate's degree in business administration with a specialization in human resources or specialization in marketing. And more recently, we are starting, and this is on our non-credit side, we're starting a preparatory course for students in human resources who want to get their human resource certification. And that program, I think what companies look for is they want to know, they want students who are committed. They want students who finish what they start in terms of their programs. And they want students who can help them solve problems. And so in the business program, we've got courses like I teach, a course called Problem Solving and Decision Making. So it helps students to be able to recognize issues that a company may be dealing with and articulate that issue in a way that helps them to formulate a vision or a concept about what that problem looks like when it's solved, and then support them with developing alternative solutions. And so students are actually, they deal with real life, real world issues. We deal with things that are going on in the current time, so that they are, when they get out of school, and when they graduate with their certificate, they know what's happening. They understand what's going on with these organizations and exactly where they can apply their skills and knowledge, and begin to, get for their foot in the door, so that they can learn what they need once they get onto that company.
Wonderful. All right. Well, let's do a pivot now. And let's move over to the area of faith leaders of Greater Houston that you are on the board of and very deeply involved with. I'm going to start it off this way and tell us about the organization, what they do. But if there ever was a time for us to be able to focus on the angels of our better nature, this is it. Leadership, and particularly faith leadership of all denominations, church, parish, temple, synagogue, and mosque, has a great role to play in that. So I'm so excited to hear about this organization called Faith Leaders of Greater Houston. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, the Faith Leaders Coalition of Greater Houston started as a result of the failure of the HEROES Act. If you remember, that was the ordinance that failed in the city of Houston. And what we noticed was that there were, what we wanted to see more of is individuals who understood what those issues were in terms of justice, in terms of human rights, in terms of equality. And so this group came together to organize and support other clergy with having a better understanding of the issues that are important to their congregants, their constituents, and also to support each other. There are several faith-based organizations, but what is unique about this one is, or the Faith Leaders Coalition of Greater Houston, is that our goal is to ensure that the faith leaders in the city have support for one another, especially during times like this, because we're supporting people who, as you mentioned, are struggling in a multitude of ways, and that can also be overwhelming to the people to the clergy. And so we are here to lift each other up and to support each other and to educate each other on issues that are important. So once a month, we offer a lunch and learn where we take a topic that is, for example, the expansion of the 45. We had Dr. Pakia Nelson come on several months ago and talk with us about what's happening with that project, so that we all have a better understanding of how we can engage in the process, and so that's primarily what our goal is. And we come together on a monthly basis and also a quarterly basis for the full membership. It's a great time, to have these kinds of connections and to be able to have this kind of dialogue, especially because, as you mentioned, we are a very diverse organization. On our board, we have someone who's Buddhist. We have our president is Jewish. We have the Muslim faith tradition represented, and just a multitude of traditions. Houston is a very diverse community, and we all don't know everything about each other. And so this is one way that we're able to learn about other cultures and religious practices, and actually model and demonstrate the kind of diversity that's needed when you have all these voices sitting around the room. And so that's really important to us, so that we can, work better together.
What was so enlightening and so wonderful to see in Houston on the day of the 60,000 member march that we did from Discovery Green to City Hall, of those 60,000 people who are there standing up against racism, prejudice, and discrimination against anybody, any group of people. The flags, the banners, the signs that you saw representing the cross spectrum of Houstonians, with the ministers standing with their people. It was just great to see everyone come together, regardless of how one is defined, or how one defines oneself. They were all there together, and they all were marching peacefully for the same reason, that if one of us is being discriminated against, we all are being discriminated against. If one of us is having a problem, we all are having a problem. And I think, to your point earlier, it is an education across the board of the understanding that these issues cut in every way you can think about them, every sector, every human being, every family. It affects it all. So just speak to that a little bit, because I know y'all done some great work in that area.
You're right, and I think what's important too is that the issues today with the police reform initiatives, as a result of George Floyd and other travesties that we've dealt with recently, it helps us basically hold up a mirror and ask ourselves, who are we, and who do we want to be in the world today? And so that's a question that faith leaders are also having to grapple with, because the conversation, as you say, it's a life and death kind of conversation. And so I think a lot of people are thinking about how they have contributed, how they have shown up as it relates to racism. What is it that they know? What is it they don't know? What is it that they think they know? And so this is definitely an opportunity for us to open the door to those conversations, and to do more than just open that door, but to really create sustainable change, and not be afraid to to say the wrong thing. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that people have is we've gotten in a way in which our conversations and our dialogues are one side or the other, and we recognize that that's not the way true change happens. We have to all sit at the table. We have to all come together and find our commonalities so that we can move forward. And faith leaders are having to have those same conversations in terms of increasing their own awareness and understanding of the issues, and dealing with racism, and dealing with understanding what are some of the micro aggressions that are happening that they may not have paid attention to before, because it maybe had not affected them on a personal level. But now it's not them out there that's having to deal with this reality. It's right here. It's hitting home for everybody, as you saw with the multitude of people during the midst of a pandemic coming out to support an issue that they felt that was a priority that they had to prioritize, including bringing their children, because you saw a lot of children out and involved in the community.
So let me ask you this, in the little time we have left, since we're starting this new year, 2021, what is your number one aspirational goal for Houston and Houstonians for 2021? And we have just a little time left.
I think we have an opportunity to lead. Many people look to Houston because of our diversity, because of our vastness in terms of the industries that we represent. Houston has an opportunity to lead, and that's not to suggest that we're not doing a great job of leading right now, but it is to say that what we need to do is to continue to prioritize the issues that are important. We need to make sure that we are looking at environmental justice issues. We need to make sure that we're looking at food insecurities and housing insecurities. I mean, this is what the pandemic has raised for us, the health disparities and the issues that we can no longer ignore, how communities of color are impacted at an alarming rate. So in terms of what we need to do in 2021, we can't let up. We've got to press on. We got to press forward and make sure that diversity and equity and as well as inclusion stay at the forefront. That's what's going to keep us being a strong city.
And I know you will continue to be part of it. We're just going to have to pause on that little note. We'll have you on at a future date later on in 2021, and we can dig into this a little deeper. So we're out of time. But again, thank you very much for being on Dialogue Houston and to start the new year off with this series, and we'll go forward. Let me just close with these comments. The divide that we've experienced in 2020, we cannot carry into 2021. The future of our democracy and our common humanity must be in the forefront. Demography is destiny. Demography is also obsolescence. So organizations need to grow, need to change, need to become more inclusive, need to become more acceptance. The microaggressions, the embedded racism, the unconscious bias that we experienced in 2020, some will definitely carry over, most will carry over to 2021. How we handle those and how we deal with those is the issue. From fragmentation to a greater sense of community and fairness, from understanding of ethical and moral imperatives that we must all come together on. And to do it together, we have to have faith and trust and relationships built on mutual trust and respect, because nothing happens without trust. The cornerstone of moving forward in 2021 is the relationships built on mutual trust and respect. We have to get out of here for now. So to everyone, as we start off this new year, Happy New Year to everyone. Happy Kwanzaa, all those things that go with starting fresh and renewed with the graces that we can all gender together. We look forward to being with you as Dialogue Houston in this new year. Until then, as always, stay well, be safe, and until then, peace, power, and love.